this. I'll do it. There we go. So, all right, so we can get started. Where's Jan? Oh, there she
I'm
comes.
here. Hi, everybody.
Jan.
Good. So I'm Jan too, according to my name. But that's all right. We can tell the difference. Okay. Do you want to just start with the ones that Becky picked out in the order she picked them out?
Also, people are more drawn to some than others. It was kind of like, I just sort of like grabbed a few that I thought were interesting, but you could just pick.
Okay. Well, how about if Becky and Aria choose ones that they want to hear, because they know better than we do what they want to hear.
And Chris.
Oh, and Chris, yes. Chris, I missed you because your picture isn't there.
I guess the ones, did you send the ones I picked out? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like the one about the favorite family story.
Are we going in any particular order?
Youngest first.
What occurs to me is that we might each have different ones of these that call to us to answer. You know what I mean? We might not all want to answer X question. So that's just a thought that I have.
I think one favorite family story was how Grandma and Grandpa Nace met, right? Isn't that kind of...
I don't remember that story.
I have no idea.
Tell us. Tell us.
Uh-oh.
Tell us.
So Grandma was teaching organ and piano, and she would go from house to house, I think with horse and buggy, but at least some of the time there was a train trip, and I think that she and Grandpa met on the train. That's the rudiments. Can somebody else fill in more of that?
Never heard that.
Never heard it. I don't remember hearing it, but you know, you're 6 years older than I am, so you
Where's
probably,
John when we need him?
Margaret, do you remember hearing it from her or from Mom, or do you remember?
Probably Mom.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know what, Becky, do you have that? Are you the holder of that book where Mom filled in the blanks? You know, do you know what I'm talking about? The grandmother book or whatever.
Yeah, the grandmother.
I have one.
Okay. Yeah,
I don't know that she told any story like that. I'd have to look and see.
Okay, so maybe that would be one that calls for more research to confirm or just.
Well, we should ask John if he remembers.
Right. So that's the one that came to my mind. And I thought everybody would say, oh yeah, we've heard that so many times. So I'm startled to hear that nobody else.
Well, I was really struck when, right after Daddy died, when we sat around the living room and shared stories, how we remembered stories so differently or didn't remember the same stories at all, you know, because there are differences in ages and differences in our when we grew up in that family, and so I'm not surprised, you know, that and I'm not surprised that you would assume that everybody knew it, because it's one that you did hear so clearly, and by the time I came along, it had already been told too many times or something. I don't know.
So did you guys think of some other favorite family?
I have one. I'm also going to say that my Wi-Fi is being weird, so I might be in and out. I was just out for a little bit, so hopefully I'll be in. But let me tell you.
Welcome back.
Thank you. I have one that I think you'll all remember, perhaps. And this is a story about Daddy when he was growing up at Lake Simcoe he was there with his, I think both his brothers and his father. I don't know that his mom or Isabel was there, but the boys and the boys and their dad were there, and they decided to put Epsom salts in the sugar bowl. And so Grandpa was sitting there reading paper and just kind of kept spooning without paying any attention, spooning in more and more of the sugar, and it just kept being bitter. And at
Wasn't
some
getting
point,
sweet
we got
enough, yeah.
clued into the fact that something was going on because everybody was so quiet. Does this ring a bell with any of you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yes.
One of the stories that Dad used to tell about his growing up period. So he went to a camp and then became a camp counselor at a lake north of Toronto. And the way you got there was by train. And the train would drop you off at a place where there was a steep embankment going down to the lake, and some other counselor would paddle over there in a canoe, pick you up and take you back to the camp. And this was happening on, I don't know if it was his first time there or a time there. And it turned out that once they got everybody and their luggage in it, the canoe started leaking really badly. And so the senior counselor who had come to pick them up, Dad's quote was, what was it? Paddle like crazy or we'll drown like rats. And they did make it safely. You couldn't come back to shore where this embankment was. It was too steep. So they had to try and get to some place where it was where they could land, and they did make it, but it was apparently a very exciting experience.
Wow.
I cut out and missed most of that, but I'll just.
Whoop,
Well,
there she goes again.
and she's frozen again.
But fortunately, we have a recording.
Yes.
Aha.
Yes.
As long as my internet doesn't kick out here.
This is a problem. Okay, I'm in the kitchen, which is near the connection, so maybe
That'll work better.
Maybe we'll see.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Yeah.
You were frozen there for a minute, visibly frozen.
Okay, well,
Are you thawing out?
I am. A little chilly, but I'm thawing out. Yep.
There you go. So, is there another one that struck people as the one they wanted to talk about? Or one that the next generation wanted to ask about particularly?
I was curious about people's beliefs, the one about people's beliefs and how they've changed over the course of their lives.
Who wants to go first on that?
Or were there any like family beliefs or things that you were taught that you rejected at various points later? Maybe a more specific way to start. Like what did you keep and what did you reject from what was like instilled in you as a kid?
Never eat with your fingers.
Never put your elbows on the table.
Uh-oh, I'm doing that now.
But you're not eating, so.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Well, I'll eat something and then no.
Right.
Always eat everything on your plate.
Always, yeah.
Yeah. And one thing that I gradually came to realize, and Jan helped me with this, that turned out to be something that was not so good, which was that our family, and particularly our father, valued talk, and lots of it. And to the extent that he preferred a car with no radio because if you turned the radio on, you couldn't talk anymore.
Wow.
Um, and at one point on a long drive, I think we were driving back to Pennsylvania, weren't we, Jan? I can't remember. Jan basically said, Howard, we need a break from all this talk. This is too much. and
Go, Jan.
and so he did stop for a while.
Yeah, that was a trip to Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
Wow.
you remember it.
I
Oh,
do.
yeah.
I can remember thinking to myself, when I grow up, everybody's going to have a chance to talk, not just one person dominating. And I was just like, and in some ways it's been very helpful. When I was running groups in the prisons, I would be really conscious of who was and was not talking and how to change that dynamic so that everybody was talking. But then later on, I've been with some people in friendship circles where some of them are introverts and they don't want to be called upon. We haven't heard from you yet. Margaret, stop that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the kind of turning points in my belief system, wasn't really a change, but it was an intensification of some of the stuff that had been in the air as we were growing up. So we went to meeting, and we went to a Sunday school at meeting, and we learned all the usual stuff. And it really didn't mean that much to me until I was in college and draft eligible, and I had to write something to tell the draft board why I wanted to be a conscientious objector. And at that point, I really kind of sat down and tried to figure out what I did believe. And then the draft board didn't believe me anyway, but they classified me 1A, and I had to appeal and show up in Richmond before the draft board and try to convince them that I really believed that stuff.
How
Did you
did it go?
convince them? Did you convince them, or were you just your number was high enough that you didn't get called?
No, I was called.
Oh, you were.
Yeah, and that's what I had to
I didn't
appeal.
remember. Ah, okay.
Yeah.
I see.
Wow, I didn't know that. Or if I
And
did,
then how did the appeal go for you?
It was really strange. So I went in there, and the first question was, so I had sent them a letter kind of laying out, a one-pager, I think, laying out what I claimed my beliefs were. And the first question was, who wrote this for you? And I tried to convince them that no, I had written it myself.
It was
And-
probably so well written they couldn't leave it.
Yeah, right. I don't know. And and then the second question was, if there were if there was a communist army on the Canadian border heading our way, what would you do, basically?
Oh my
And
God.
and there were a bunch of questions along those lines. And so I did my best, and they did in fact allow me to qualify as a conscientious
Wow.
objector. So
That's amazing.
yeah, it was quite an experience, really.
You're
you
stealing.
were living in Bloomington at the time?
No, in Philadelphia, I was at the American Friends Service Committee, already doing alternative service.
Yeah, really. That's wild.
And then they made you drive to Richmond.
I took the bus. Yeah,
Wow.
Did I see John appearing
yeah.
there?
John
Yeah,
is here.
John is here and Stephen's here.
Yeah,
Oh,
John,
Yeah,
Collection Tech.
Yeah.
This is related, but it's back to the family story. One of the family stories that I think is really interesting is when Dad tried to get his citizenship
Yeah,
and was denied the first time because he had been a conscientious objector during World War II.
right.
And my understanding was that he didn't even really need to be, I mean, he was still a Canadian citizen, so he didn't have to show up at all. I mean, he was exempt, but he chose to do alternative service and therefore was denied citizenship. It was really a strange situation. But that, I don't know whether the younger generation knows about that at all.
Yeah.
A second judge did give him,
He had
grant
to
him
go
citizenship.
back. They lived in Richmond at that time, and it was a Richmond
Yeah.
judge that denied him, and he went back to
Oh.
Minneapolis to a judge
Oh,
there.
oh,
Yeah.
okay.
But that denial made the national news because
Okay.
it was right after some court decision that some ruling that you couldn't deny citizenship based on pacifism or something like that. Does anybody remember
Okay.
that?
Yeah, I don't remember.
And the only coverage that I know of was the article in the Pal Item.
Pal
about
Item,
it.
yeah. Yeah.
It's something went across the AP wire about it. I mean, it wasn't like big headline news or anything, but it did
Okay.
get covered in some
Hmm.
to some degree.
Do you know why he decided to do the alternative service if he didn't need to?
I'm not sure I'm right about that, but maybe one of the older folks will remember that.
He did do
Oh,
it's true,
yeah.
but I don't know why exactly.
I think he was draftable if he wanted to stay in the States.
Oh, okay.
Did he have any conflict within himself about whether he wanted to become a US citizen or remain a Canadian citizen?
I don't think
Well,
so.
I don't think so either. This was long after. I mean, this whole episode with getting or not getting his citizenship happened when I was a teenager, or
Oh, okay.
maybe older than 10 anyway.
Mhm.
Oh, I thought it was more like like when I was a baby, but I don't know.
Well,
Anyway.
when I was 10, no.
Anyway.
I don't remember.
Yeah, and it was after, yeah, he and mom were married and they had kids, and yeah, he was definitely very much had very much become a solidly a resident of and involved in this country's.
And they were living in Richmond, so that would have been post what, 53 or 2 when they moved there? I can't remember.
53, yeah.
53, okay.
52. They moved
52,
there.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and somewhere I have a copy of the Pal Item. You guys probably have it
Yes.
too. Yeah.
Somewhere.
That pink plastic folder that mom gave each of us.
Okay.
John, we had a question that maybe you can verify or not. Okay, can you hear okay?
Yeah, yep, I hear pretty well. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the first question on the floor was about stories, family stories. And I was recalling how Grandma and Grandpa Nace met. Do you remember that story?
One of them missed a train and therefore was in the station when the other one was.
Yeah, okay.
Ta-da!
Good.
Okay, I knew it had something to do with the train.
I wonder how they got talking though, that's just like, I don't know, it's just weird. So random.
Yeah.
Pretty cool though.
Yep.
Oh,
I don't know how many
Yeah.
people were there waiting for the train, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, Jan and
There's
I met because of a transportation problem too.
oh, that's right. I think I remember that. Yeah.
A bus strike. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just remembered another, and now I just forgot it.
So therefore you and Jan ended up in the same bus station, is that what?
No, we ended up walking together to get home. So we both lived about a couple of miles from the AFSC, but in the same direction. So we started walking back and forth together.
Ah,
God, I just had another family story that I wanted to relay, but now I've forgotten it. I'll
Yeah, we'll
burst
come back.
in with it later
Mhm.
when I remember.
John, the other question was about beliefs and if you can think of ways in which they've changed over the course of your life. Like thought maybe like beliefs that you grew up with and later rejected, or I mean, or just whatever trajectory of
Okay.
your beliefs.
Well, I would describe myself as a Buddhist now, if that's the kind of belief you're talking about.
Mhm.
Unbelievable though it may seem.
Like, what was the first like spark of interest in that for you?
Beatniks, reading about beatniks.
Mhm.
Huh.
Actually met a couple of them later on, but
Yeah, you had a bunch of those books, the books related to the beatnik scene, I remember.
right.
Black.
Pretty unsophisticated people, some of them.
Mhm.
But that got you to San Francisco? And
No, that
Oh.
what got me to San Francisco was I had to get out of New York because I was not doing well in New York in any number of ways. But so I went to Deerfield, Massachusetts, and met a woman there and took up with her, and she was from San Francisco, and that's how I got to San Francisco.
Mhm.
And
right.
yeah, and then I went to a friend's meeting there, and that's where I heard an announcement there will be meditation in the morning here.
Mhm.
I started going to that.
Interesting. I just remembered the other family story. Do you want to hear that one now? Do you want to backtrack to that or not?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, this is a fun one, I think. So, our grandfather Nace was a principal, is that correct?
Yes.
Of an elementary or something.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what age.
Right.
And when they were living in Cleveland, the flu or no, I don't know what it was that came along, but it kind of ran through the family. And because he was a principal, they wanted to keep him away from the family. So grandpa stayed in the parlor and didn't come out for like a month while it went through whatever the disease went through all the kids. And grandma passed food to him over through the transom into the parlor. And again, this went on for like a month because one after another, the kids came down with whatever it was. Does anyone else remember that story?
Yeah.
I remember it happening before they were in Cleveland, when they were in
Okay, that could be
what?
McKeesport.
Yeah, McKeesport. Yeah,
Pennsylvania.
yeah.
That could be.
Was it
the kids?
the flu epidemic
Well,
in
no, I said
1918?
flu or something. I don't feel like it was. I feel like it was more like one of the measles or one of those
Uh-huh.
things, maybe.
Uh-huh.
I don't think it was like the big flu that happened, and I don't think it was quite as serious as that. He just didn't want to be exposing the children at school, so
Right.
he made sure he quarantined himself.
I think the big flu was right at the end of the First World War.
Right.
In
Yeah.
other words, earlier.
Right, much earlier.
Right.
Yeah.
Interestingly, he was the principal of a school. I don't remember what level it was for gifted kids in Cleveland, and one of the gifted kids was John Siebold, who became my employer later on.
That's great. That's a great story. Wow. There's also the family story about Daddy and Einstein.
Mhm.
Who wants to tell the Einstein story?
There's not much to it from what.
No, there's not much to it, but it's a fun story, right?
Yeah.
You go ahead, Jane.
All right. Well, what I remember is that Daddy took a course from Einstein at Princeton, right?
Yep.
Princeton.
Yeah. And he was, of course, in awe of this amazing professor, and had the opportunity to be next to him in line at the cafeteria or whatever, and wanted to say something very clever. And all he came up with was, what was it? Something like, do you drink coffee?
Yeah, tell me, do students in Germany
Oh,
drink as much coffee as students do here?
Oh, right,
Something
right.
like that.
And then the answer was either 9 or yeah, but I don't remember which.
Yeah. And so I've told that story, and so there are certain friends of mine with whom we say, well, as Einstein would say, yeah.
That's a great story.
Getting back to the beliefs, one of the beliefs that changed for me was that you have on here wealth. And I can remember when Mom was getting older in Salem, and it seemed to me George had to work really hard with Mom to have her put any of her monies into the stock market. Do you remember that, George?
I remember long discussions about insurance, long-term care insurance and that sort of stuff.
Oh,
I don't remember stock market stuff.
But she finally did put money into stocks, right? I mean,
She had some, yeah. And she did get a long-term care policy with a 6-month waiting period before it kicked in. And by the time she needed it, she forgot about the 6-month waiting period, and she was very aggravated at the company because it wasn't paying for her care when she had this policy all these years.
mm,
oh, okay.
mm.
We've sort of
remember-
not. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I remember when Daddy died. This is what I remember. It might not be quite accurate, but I remember he wanted to give away a lot of the money to, I mean, he wanted to donate it mostly to like AFSC or something like that. And Mom had to work really hard to convince him that they should keep money to give to the kid, to us, which is what they ended up doing, I mean, obviously. But so it wasn't when he, I mean, obviously it's before he died, but I mean, yeah, now I said when he died. I don't know why I said that, but anyway, it was when they were talking about wills and things. He wanted to just give everything to AFSC or whatever. Does anyone else remember that?
I didn't know about it, but
No.
Okay, yeah.
But all I know is that last year, he went on these spending jags and would buy things in duplicate that he already had, and that computer that he never was able to use. And so,
A lazy boy recliner that like the day before he died, I think.
oh, really?
That's why I remember it. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, wow.
well,
And
Mom
it
got a
was
lot of use out of that.
Yeah.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
yeah.
Right, yeah.
I remember her as being very distressed that it had been bought.
Yeah,
Yeah, probably so.
but
She did, yeah.
she did use it a lot.
Mhm.
Do you remember like what kinds of lessons that they taught you about money or wealth, or how to approach it, or how they felt about it in general, or anything like that?
Well, there was always an emphasis on saving money, and we did grow up fairly poor. Earlham didn't pay much, and so Mom made a lot of clothes for herself, and particularly for the girls, and for us boys, she made our pajamas and stuff like that. And it was a big deal when we could go down to the store where they sold the fabric and pick out, you know, the fabric with cars and trucks or whatever it was for our pajamas.
Yeah.
They would they saw the value of books and music. So music lessons, I don't think they ever fought us about music lessons.
Oh.
And of course, we could get most books from the library, but those were two huge values as far as they were concerned. And buying clothes off the rack at a store was definitely not on that list.
No.
Yeah.
And we
Well,
did have a lot of records. We had a lot of records, it seems like, anyway. a lot of musicals and,
Well, the musicals tended to come from the library too. They had a huge collection.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there were low quality records that we got from the grocery store. Those ones that were
Oh.
Ed Sullivan Presents, and
Uh,
and Ed Sullivan had different color skin on every
Cover.
They were- we got one every week for a while there.
Oh,
Anyway. Mom tended much more to be to really live and be a frugal person than Daddy did. I mean, I think that was kind of who she was, much more than who he was. I think she needed to rein him in, or felt uncomfortable with some of his spending, certainly in that last year or so of his life. But I think that was just an exaggeration of
mhm.
how he was anyway in the world. He tended to want to spend money more than she was comfortable with.
and we certainly almost never ate out, right? I mean, like, I
Right.
don't remember eating out when at all, like ever, almost.
We ate out when they paid off the house mortgage. We ate out when his book was published. There were
Sometimes on the road.
Yeah, on the road.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
Usually on the
I
road.
do
it
remember
was
to go to,
an A and
I remember
W.
going
What?
well, to Miller's once in a blue moon.
Yeah.
After a recital.
Yeah.
Oh.
Once in a while
Like
to
ice
the
cream?
Hagerstown Smorgasbord, once in a blue moon.
Oh,
I don't remember.
Yeah, Dad got those ice cream cones, right?
Yes,
With your bus money.
Yeah, I got, yeah.
what
I
was this? I'm
So I
sorry.
had bus money to go to my music lessons,
Oh,
Right.
but I would tend to actually use that at Miller's to get ice cream, and walk home.
okay.
And Miller's had these huge cones. I've never seen them anywhere else, where the first like 4 or 5 dips would go down inside, and then you pile up from there. And it was 10 cents for the first dip and a nickel for every dip after that.
Wow.
And
They
so
had lots of flavors too.
yeah, tons of flavors. So for 50 cents, if you could accumulate 50 cents, you could get nine scoops of ice cream in there.
And you did that? Oh my God.
Well, I didn't usually have 50 cents, but
Right.
the bus money was only 15 cents, I think.
Oh, yeah,
But
okay.
but sometimes I would have some money.
That's so funny. Wow.
And they also at Miller's they had what they called a pig's dinner. You remember that, John? And
I do remember the name, but I don't remember what it referred to.
There
Is
was
it like a big banana split kind of
there was
thing?
a double banana split, two banana splits plus a bunch of ice cream. And if you could finish it, you got a little pin that said, "I was a pig at Miller's." And John had one of those once.
But,
Wow.
but they were expensive. You couldn't do it casually.
All right. It was expensive.
Gosh, I thought you were going to say they would give it to you free if you finished it, but no, they just gave you a stupid pin.
Yeah. But not many people had them.
Uh,
Do you guys
brother did.
remember on one of our trips across country, we stopped to get soft ice cream, and it was turning a little sour, and Dad ate all of ours.
not gonna waste that.
Mm.
Oh, that's
I
Sounds
funny.
remember
about
that.
right. No.
He liked buttermilk, so that makes sense, kind of.
Pretty bad.
We went to visit his brother in
Rifton.
yeah, no, it was before that.
Oh,
The other
So this
other
was
company-
James.
Walter,
was
yeah,
James.
when he was
James.
Walter,
Yeah, Walter James.
Walter, yeah.
And anyway, we went and we had some I don't know, half and half or something in a container, and the road was so bumpy we had little flecks of butter in it.
my God.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, yeah, we had bad cars, a lot. And I remember one time we set off from Richmond. I can't remember where we were headed in one of our bad cars, and we got as far as the middle of Ohio, and the car broke down, and it was going to be a major issue, taking a couple of days to repair. We found a shop that would work on it, and so we camped in the gravel parking lot next to the uh, car repair place, and spent a couple of days waiting for the car to get fixed, and explored the town.
Neither of our parents was a very good driver. They both learned to drive when I was a baby.
Yeah,
They got their first car when I was a baby. And you know, neither of them was ever really totally, you know, second nature
competent.
driver. And it showed.
It did. Before we had a car, we borrowed a car from the Buchingers
Right.
and drove to Toronto. But at the border, we were held up for hours because the only proof we had that we were permitted to have that car was a letter from Hans Buchinger saying, you know, please, you know, yes, the Alexanders have my permission to have my car. And they almost wouldn't let us through. And we were sitting there for hours. And then we got there in the middle of the night and had a hard time finding wherever it was we were going. I don't think it was a relative. I think it was a friend of Dad's. So
I don't remember that at all.
made an impression on me.
You know, we haven't talked about beliefs in marriage, politics. Well, we did a little bit on politics, men and women.
Well, when I came out to them, which was 50 years ago, when I was 20 and now I'm 70. So I was kind of really shocked at Daddy's reaction because he had a really strong negative reaction. And, you know, here he was, a liberal Quaker, and he was anything but liberal in his reaction. And he said things, he said things like about complementarity, you know, you have to have a man and a woman to have a balanced relationship, and he just went on about all kinds of things, but there was this anger behind it, and I couldn't, it was like, what is this? You know, what's going on? And Mom was completely at ease, and she was trying to bring him down to, like, now, Howard, you remember those two women in Minneapolis? And, you know,
Oh, wow.
huh?
I
What?
said, oh, wow. Yeah, I know. Yeah, interesting.
And
Did you think they didn't have a clue, either of them, before you came out to them?
I think they did. And actually, Daddy told me that he did know that I think they thought that I had been lovers with Mary Abner years before then, and I had actually hadn't been lovers with her yet by then, but but anyway, I mean, it was years later, it was right 6 months before Daddy died when he sent us each the kind of bizarre document that in which he came out to us as a cross-dresser, and how consumed with shame he'd been his whole life about that. You know, I think he was equating the two, that I was going to be if I lived my life as a lesbian, I was setting myself up to have a life of shame and misery.
Mm.
Um, I suspect that's what he was trying to save me, steer me away from.
Mm,
Um,
interesting.
and he, over the intervening years, he did a lot of work and really came around a lot. We got a lot in a lot better place together,
Mhm.
in relation to one another over the years from
Mhm.
from um 1973, 74 to when he died in 85. Yeah.
Wow.
I know that when we were in Kenya, I was had this flirtation with David, who was one of the people at our house, and so I asked mom and dad if I could have sex with him, and um, and I don't remember in the moment what happened, but that night, mom slid a piece of paper under my door and it said she didn't know how to talk about it, but she thought that sex should only be with marriage.
Yeah.
And did you ever talk with her about it?
Hmm,
Or
no, I
Did
don't think so. No, that
wow.
was, yep.
But I want to
And
ask why you asked. I don't know. I don't know if that's an answerable question, but that's like, to me, that is
well,
like
you know,
unimaginable.
birth control, I would have had to have gone through them. I mean, we were living kind of out of any town or anything. There's no way I could have. I mean, the place where David and Stephen lived was right a few feet from our front door. So
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Wasn't much of a place either. I mean, it was
no,
a
inside.
cinder block, dirt floor, I think, maybe, or at least cinder block.
Yeah, it was.
Very,
Yeah,
very
just
poor
and that was
place.
about it. Yep.
Did anything happen between you?
No. Then I went into hysterics and I was booing and crying and in the relationship with him, I think I just wanted to. I don't know. Maybe I used mom as my excuse to end. I don't know. I really don't know.
This
Oh,
is,
go ahead.
oh, well, no, go ahead. All right. This is not really quite related, but it's kind of interesting because mom and dad, sort of didn't know how to handle things a lot, like that one, Margaret, for instance. And when we were in Kenya, we were at what they called a game park, which is a place where they had the animals, and we were staying in these cabins, and I ended up, long story, but I ended up going to this. There was this like shop, curio shop or whatever, and the person asked me to come back and see something else after hours, and I went back, and he wanted to kiss me. I was 8 or 9, and um, scared the shit out of me. And I went back, and I remember crying and crying and crying and talking to mom and dad and wanting to stay with them in their cabin. Rachel and I were in one cabin, and they were in another cabin, and I don't think they ever did anything. I mean, I just don't think they ever confronted anybody about it. Probably not. It would have been probably hard to do anyway in a different culture. But boy, it was so, it was so traumatic for me. And they just didn't confront things really. They didn't, yeah.
It sounds like they, yeah, like you're saying, had trouble with emotional expression, and I just wonder how you feel that you absorbed or didn't absorb that tendency, or had to work on it, or how you related to growing up that way.
Great question, Becky.
For all of us, right? I mean, you're talking about all of us.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, I think us Alexanders in general maybe are not very good at being angry or expressing anger in a constructive way. I mean, I think that's kind of a common tendency of us.
Mhm.
And I think that's kind of a legacy of our parents, really. It's hard to talk about difficult things.
That's the nature of difficulty.
What was that?
You said hard to talk about difficult things, and I says that's the nature of difficulty.
Right.
Ah, okay,
Mhm.
sure.
You know, from my perspective, so like I think that's true for me too. I guess that's, you know, like you said, the legacy, but a lot of people talk about difficult things, whether they're not they do it constructively is a whole nother question.
Right.
I think to generalize, maybe to overgeneralize, but to generalize, I think we don't
Mhm.
constructively or otherwise at all. So
Who's we? I mean, who?
Alexander.
Okay, just making sure I understood what we were talking about, what we were
Yeah.
talking about.
So, you know, I think part of that is maybe a bit of Quaker culture.
Mhm. Yep.
Obviously, Grandpa wasn't, and I'm not sure about Grandma originally a Quaker, but I think
That
that
was.
She wasn't either.
tendency- yeah, I didn't think so. So they were both converted, but you know, that's kind of, I think, a hallmark of Quaker culture, in at least in certain strains,
Mhm.
which they probably fit right into.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah, true enough.
I've told this one story about one time when Dad got so angry at John, and they were upstairs, and as Dad was coming down the stairs, Dad was crying.
Mm.
I think he was so ashamed of himself for how angry he had gotten at John. But yeah, I mean, I've had my years of therapy. Years and years and years and years, and you know, who knows whether I would be with somebody now if emotions had been handled differently. I have no clue.
Right. Yeah, Jan had to tolerate a lot from me, but she made good progress with me. So.
Yeah, the anger one in particular, I just wonder if anyone has had, you know, how you've sort of learned to deal with that more or not, or just sort of accepted that legacy of sort of not dealing with it.
Well, I know I'm better at talking about it than I used to be, and better at recognizing it and saying something. I'm not very good at being angry, though, still.
I certainly have made progress. Various kind of situations and levels and so on.
Consciously or just through time?
You know, that's one of the ideas. It seems to me that meditation is for. A lot of this stuff settles in, and of course that's, you know, Quakerism is also a meditative practice, and so that sitting quietly in either circumstance, you know, you sort through this kind of stuff to one extent or another.
You remember when you got so angry at Jan and me at Jane's house that time, John?
Nope.
I'm aware that we're coming up on an hour here, and there are a bunch of questions that we haven't touched on, and I'm wondering if there are some that people would really like to touch on before we call it a day.
And or if we want to make another date.
Sure.
Both sounds good to me.
I'm just curious to hear, and maybe the answer is no, but if you do each like have like what object in your that's still in your life is from childhood, and or whichever one is like most meaningful to you.
Well, I'm a person who has a lot of objects. So the oldest one, I think, or the earliest one is I have a set of things you stack that are for a child, and they're, you know, they get progressively smaller and they stack up, and it was one that we had in our household as a when I was a child. But I was thinking the other day about my I have a couple things from, or I guess really one set of a couple things from Kenya that I've had all these years since then. A set of small, really well done animals, little animals made out of like plastic or whatever, but they were well done. And I have quite a few of those still hanging out. And I have some other little things from Kenya that I've had all these years, and I have several other things from when I was a little girl, but those, the oldest ones are these stackable things that I still have. They're very cute.
Those hexagonal.
Yeah. Do you want to see them? I have them right over there.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the Kenya stuff, because let me show you.
He went away? What's he doing? He's gonna come back. Okay, I'm gonna get mine.
Ah, Jane didn't see that, George, I think.
No, I didn't.
Jane didn't see it. Oh, there it is.
This
Yeah.
this rhino
Weird. That's familiar.
I bought on an outing of the Mountain Club of Kenya. And we stopped in a little village where everybody in the village was employed in carving for tourists, but most of it was really terrible stuff. And the people, and you know, the whole place was paved in bits of wood left over from these activities, and most of it, oh yeah, I remember those, Jane, those stacking cups.
Each have a little animal on. I don't know, you can see that, but they're all different.
Right. But there, whoa. But in this particular village, there was one guy who had a house which, unlike the others, which were thatch roof and mud, he had brick, and he was the master carver, and most of his stuff, so dealers from Nairobi would come around and buy the cheap stuff, but he got good money for his, and this was one of his, and I had to pay what was a fortune for carvings then, but I think it was only 20 shillings, which would be like $3 at the time. But I really like it, and it's very well done compared to most of the stuff you would find in the
It
tourist
has like
stores.
a texture on it, like a little divots on it.
Yeah,
doesn't it?
yeah, it does. Yeah, he would take a chisel and turn it and make these little holes everywhere.
I remember that.
Corner of a chisel, and it would just walk it across the surface of the beast. And yeah, so, and this kind of reminds me of that whole Kenya experience, and so it's one I'm not gonna let go of. So
I have various things from Kenya too, including my little this big diary that I kept while I was at Kenya High School, and a bunch of other stuff from those 2 years.
was it one of those ones with a little key that you could lock?
No, it was plastic cover. No, it wasn't. No, nothing fancy.
You know, I took that question a little bit differently. And I thought dodecaballs.
Well, those are definitely a memory from childhood, you
Yeah.
know.
Right?
Yeah.
Right,
childhood.
lots of memories
Yeah.
around that, and making them at Christmas time and distributing them around to
Yeah.
our neighbors and friends and all of that.
Yeah. I have quite a collection of dodecaball variants that in a container up in the closet.
Ah,
And,
nice.
different different variations on the weave and shapes and stuff.
Great.
You and Rachel put a lot of time and effort into figuring out
Mm.
how to do 20 strips and all that kind of thing. Just amazing.
It is.
Okay, well, so do we want to pick a time to do this again? People interested in that?
Yeah, we missed John, I think, on if you have an object.
I don't have a particular time. Yeah.
I just,
Where I am now is I'm at work because, you know, I simply can't do that with the kind of alleged connectivity at home.
No, Becky's question was about an object
Oh,
from
oh,
your
oh,
childhood.
excuse me. I thought that was a time.
Well,
She
we were
was
talking
referring
about
to-
both.
well, I just didn't want to move on before checking if you had one.
No, I don't. Yeah. Of course, I was in Gary, Indiana, doing alternative service, but I don't.
Well, not necessarily, just from
Do
childhood.
you still
Yeah.
have your union card for the workers of what was the union called?
IWW, Industrial
IW
Workers of the World.
Right.
So you're a wobbly.
I don't think I do. No.
You're a wobbly? I didn't know that.
So speaking of Gary Hospital, I've got in my pocket right now your key tag from when you were in the engineering department at Gary Hospital.
Ah, very good. Key tag.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's a piece of flat brass and it's got your name punched in on one side and engraved in the other side. It says Gary Memorial Hospital Engineering, I think.
Too
Wow.
much. No, I didn't remember that at all.
Yeah, I've had it for 30 years.
Right.
Very good. Yeah, no, it was some of the time there was pretty memorable, but it was pretty uncomfortable. One thing
That's the wobbly card, huh?
one thing I heard a couple years ago was that the alto saxophonist Cannonball Adderley died at our hospital.
Ah,
Wow.
But that was like 1975, not while I was there, but still it was funny to see that.
It does 7 o'clock on a Sunday evening sound like the best time to do this?
Sounds like an okay time to me.
Yeah.
Same here.
Yep.
Okay. How soon?
Should we try for a holiday edition?
Sure. So what would that mean? Let's take a look here at the calendar. So that might
The 31st?
I don't want to
That
do
is
the
New
30
Year's Eve.
I'd rather not do either the 24th or the 31st. We're going to have a big gang in town here.
How about the 17th then?
That would be fine with me.
Which is also a Sunday.
Sunday,
Yes.
yeah.
2 weeks from now.
2 weeks from today, yeah, Dad.
Actually, I even have that already marked on my calendar. We must.
Great intuition there. Okay. Well, let's go for that unless we decide by email on something else in the interim.
Sounds
And the
wonderful.
same list of questions.
We can do more. We can come up with more questions. See what people are interested in,
Yeah.
and we should do a Kenya edition for one of them. I
Oh,
think.
that'd be fun. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe it could be that.
Okay. So Becky, I'll leave that ball in your court.
Okay.
It might be
And then
fun
we
to,
should. Oh,
well, it just
sorry.
might be fun to hear what kind of, I don't know how to exactly put this, but what what you younger people think the legacy from the Alexanders has dripped down to you.
Drip down, did you say?
Yeah,
Yes,
that's what I said.
Maybe we can tailor some questions to that.
Mhm.
That sounds
Craig,
like fun. I think that'd be a really interesting conversation. We already kind of touched on that earlier, didn't we?
Yeah, a little
Right.
bit with different things, but yeah, it might be fun to really
That-
concentrate on that at some point.
Yeah, maybe let's try for that one, and we can poll the cousins for questions.
Maggie and Molly should be home that day too, so maybe we could drag them into it as well.
Uh,
Uh, and we should
Okay.
set up like a private YouTube account or something to upload these to, I think.
Okay, so
Ooh,
I have an account I can upload it to.
Oh,
and-
yeah,
and then
okay.
share the link.
That sounds good.
And how would this function? Would just be something we could sign into and look at?
Yeah, if once I send out the link, if you click on it, it'll take you to YouTube and it'll play the whole thing back.
Okay.
very cool.
Yeah.
Along with the other ones that we did before?
I think I would need to get those up there because I recorded them.
And
Guys,
there's,
I gotta run. This is lovely, and I'll look forward to seeing the links for the next thing.
okay, you bet. Thanks for
Talk to y'all
joining
soon.
us.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, I think we're good for Sunday, the 17th at
Yes.
7 o'clock Eastern.
All right. Great. Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Okay,
Bye.
thanks.
Everybody.
Very well.
Bye.
Bye-bye.